Listen. Don't smile yet. Don't nod like this is familiar territory, like you've heard some version of this before, because what's coming isn't borrowed from seminars, podcasts, or late-night scrolls through dark psychology threads. This isn't a course you signed up for. This isn't a skill tree you unlocked. This is older than language, older than the first lie ever told around a fire. It was humming in your blood before you had words for betrayal, before anyone taught you what a boundary even was. While the rest of the world was busy learning how to perform humanity, you were born already fluent in its shadows. They took classes on persuasion, on framing, on subtle influence. You opened your eyes and the room was already speaking to you in frequencies no one else could hear. They practiced mirroring body language in front of mirrors. You mirrored energy so precisely that people left conversations feeling like they'd been gently dissected without a single scalpel in sight. They learned silence as a tactic. You learned it as a native tongue. Go back, way back. Remember the adults who said you stared too long, asked too much, felt things too loudly, even when your mouth stayed shut. Remember being called sensitive like it was a disease, intense like it was a warning label, quiet like it was a crime. They sat you in offices with soft voices and clipboards and tried to sand down the edges of a mind that was already reading the cracks in their masks. They wanted you smaller, softer, easier to predict. But you weren't malfunctioning. You were running an entirely different operating system, one that processed the unsaid, the half-second hesitation, the microscopic tightening at the corner of someone's mouth when they lied and thought no one noticed. They called it anxiety. You called it early warning. They called it overthinking. You called it staying alive. And because they couldn't understand the way you moved through the world, they did what frightened people always do. They labeled, they medicated, they pathologized. They turned your clarity into a disorder because a mind that refuses to swallow comfortable illusions is the most dangerous thing in a society built on them. They watched you, like scientists, watch something they can't quite classify, waiting for the moment you'd finally crack and prove you were as fragile as they needed you to be. But the joke was always on them. Every test they designed, you passed without knowing it was a test. Every trap they laid, you stepped around without looking down. Every time they tried to pull you into their scripted little dramas, you simply refused to read their lines, not out of arrogance, out of instinct. The same instinct that told your ancestors when the air shifted before the storm, when the smile didn't reach the eyes, when the kind offer came with a hidden blade taped to the underside. They brought in the experts, therapists who spoke in gentle circles, trying to convince you that your gut was wrong. Authority figures who leaned on titles and degrees like shields. Friends who collected your secrets the way children collect pretty rocks, only to weaponize them later. And every single one walked away empty-handed, confused, a little rattled, because there was nothing to grab onto. You weren't hiding anything. You were simply vibrating at a frequency their instruments weren't built to detect. The kind of presence that doesn't announce itself with noise or flash, but quietly rewires the temperature of every room it enters. Years later, they still bring your name up in conversations with new people, the way sailors talk about storms they survived. You had to be there, they say, shaking their heads, because explaining you is like trying to describe color to someone born blind. Here's what real psychological dominance looks like when it's not performed. It's lived. It's walking into a space and watching people unconsciously adjust their posture, because something in the air just shifted. It's never having to call someone a liar out loud because they start stuttering over their own contradictions the moment your attention lands on them. It's the way your silence makes entire group chats go quiet. The way your absence at an event becomes the main topic of conversation. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to threaten. You just have to stop pretending you didn't see what you saw, and suddenly everyone else is forced to look at the mess they've been stepping around for years. They spent decades trying to reverse engineer you. What's the technique? What's the angle? Where's the manipulation? And the answer? That there is no technique, no angle, no manipulation. Drives them absolutely insane. You're not playing chess. You're not even on the board. You're the gravity that tilts the table when the game gets too comfortable. You don't calculate moves. You feel the shift in pressure 3 exits before the storm arrives. Your nervous system learned to read micro changes in breathing patterns, pupil dilation, the exact millisecond someone's smile freezes because they just realized they said too much. What they called hypervigilance, you called Tuesday. Every narcissist who ever tried to rewrite your reality became an involuntary professor. Every fake friend who smiled to your face while sharpening the knife became a live demonstration. Every partner who thought love bombing would blind you to the red flags became a case study in how quickly someone can unravel when they realize the mirror they're performing in front of doesn't blink. You didn't take notes. You absorbed. You synthesized. You turned their weapons into antibodies. And somewhere along the line, you stopped reacting and started observing from a distance so calm it felt cold to everyone else. That's when they really lost their minds. Because indifference, true indifference, not the fake kind people perform when they're hurt, but the real kind that comes when someone finally accepts a truth most people die still denying. That is the nuclear option. You don't scream, you don't cry, you don't explain. You just remove your energy so completely that the space you used to occupy becomes a black hole pulling in every loose accusation, every desperate text, every wait. What did I do? Until they're orbiting a void they created. They went to school for this. You survived it. They memorized scripts. You learned to hear the static underneath the words. They practiced gray rocking as a defense mechanism. You became the rock, the mountain, the entire goddamn landscape. And now when they try the old tricks, the subtle digs, the backhanded compliments, the strategic vulnerability, it's almost comical. You see the hook before the bait even leaves their mouth. You feel the agenda in the way they say your name. You've sat across from real predators, real architects of emotional destruction, and walked away not just intact, but upgraded. These amateurs with their TikTok psychology and their borrowed tactics. Their background noise, cute in the way a child swinging a plastic sword is cute when you've already been to war. You became a walking polygraph wrapped in human skin, not because you wanted to. Because the cost of missing the signs one more time was too high. Your body learned to register threat in a shift of weight, in the half-beat pause before an answer, in the way someone's voice climbs half a note when they're performing sincerity. You can't turn it off now, even if you wanted to. It's like trying to unlearn breathing. And yes, it's exhausting. Yes, it makes dating feel like defusing bombs with your teeth. Yes, it makes trust feel like a foreign language you once spoke fluently in another life. But it also makes you untouchable in ways most people will never understand. Because you don't need confessions. You don't need proof. You don't need them to admit what they did. Your body already filed the report the second they walked through the door. The highest form of strategy isn't aggression, it's absence. It's the ability to vanish so thoroughly that your absence does the screaming for you. And you, without ever meaning to, became a master of disappearance. Not the dramatic kind, not storming out or blocking numbers in a rage, but the quiet kind. The kind where one day they realize they haven't heard from you in weeks and they can't remember the last time you asked how they were. The kind where your name stops coming up in their stories because there's no new material to mine. The kind where your silence becomes a mirror they can't stop staring into, and everything ugly they've ever done starts staring back. They'll call you cold. They'll call you damaged. They'll call you too much, right up until the moment they need something only too much can provide. Let them. The people who belong in your life won't need you to shrink. They'll stand in the full voltage of who you are and ask for a higher setting. The rest? They were never passengers. They were just dead weight you finally learned to drop without looking back. You didn't study warfare. You were forged in it. Your scars taught you angles no classroom ever could. Your betrayals became blueprints. Your heartbreak became armor so seamless, most people don't even realize you're wearing it until they bounce off. And now you walk through the world carrying a kind of peace that looks like ice from the outside, but burns like a furnace on the inside. A peace that says, I've seen everything you're capable of, and none of it moves me anymore. Something shifted when you finally stopped explaining yourself to people determined to misunderstand. The universe took notice. The static cleared. The wrong people started falling away like dead leaves in a wind you didn't even have to summon. Your energy developed an immune system. Someone walks into your orbit and your stomach clenches before your brain has time to say hello. You already know.